on my part to get a sense as to what directions you're heading in, where some of your challenges are, and then also talk about our community of practice called Going Forward. So just by way of introducing the topic, today we're talking about career ladders and lattices as well as career pathways, and how these two things fit together, how we visualize them, and then give us a sense as to how you're conceptualizing this in your communities and your program. Let me move on here. So when we talk about career ladders and lattices, I want to be clear about what we're talking about. So career ladders and lattices really are those devices that help people visualize and learn about the job options that are available as they progress through a career. So if you imagine kind of a diagram, and I'll show you one in a minute, a diagram where you've got various points of entry and various ways that people can progress through a career from that entry-level position. That's what we're talking about with a career ladder and a career lattice. It consists of a group of related jobs that comprise a career, and it's important for us to know that they're not industry-specific. They frequently span multiple organizations because movement within one organization might not be possible. So as we look through career ladders, we want to also think about where folks go within a community, and do we have the right supports in place to support them, right? So we might have the right supports in place to support folks becoming a CNA, but we might not actually have the right supports for folks to become advanced nursing supervisors, right? So we need to recognize where our support programs lack, where we need to shore up our employment structures, and to make sure that we're heading in the right direction when we put together career pathways and career ladders, making sure that we're actually providing the right kind of future for our participants and our students. So that's kind of the conceptualization for where we're coming from with this. Why we use career ladders, or why we even use the concept of career ladders, is that it may very well attract individuals to an industry by showing this potential career progression beyond the entry points, right? It's all fine and good to become a CNA, but if that doesn't lead you anywhere, is that really someplace where you want to end? Is that a terminal spot for you? It focuses workforce development efforts, right? To my point earlier, as we contemplate building out a career pathway system and the various progressive steps in that career pathway system. Are we focusing our workforce development efforts correctly? And if not, how can we redirect? How can we make sure that we have places for people to land so that they're not preparing for careers that don't exist in their local area, right? It also shows people how different jobs interconnect within careers in an industry. Every industry has multiple ways where those careers can go and can be directed, and can we show people what those look like? Can we give them a demonstration of that value? And then also informing future workers about the training, the education, and the development experiences that will enable them to accomplish those career objectives once they set them, right? So really being able to show them what that progression looks like. By way of visualization, and I'm just going to open this up all the way so that we can see it. This is a career ladder in advanced manufacturing, and this gives you a sense as to where someone comes in as an assembly worker, goes in as a welder, and all the different ways and spaces that might take them there. Now, this is developed through ONET, and once we get done with this, I can actually take us back onto the ONET website, and I can show you where all of those career ladders exist. ONET's gone through a comprehensive. Folks, if you wouldn't mind muting your phones just during this part so that we can, there's a lot of background noise. So once we get done with this, I can actually take you onto the ONET website, and I can show you where that exists and what some of the work that's happened actually through the Competency Center. It's a competency model clearinghouse. And they have done a tremendous amount of work actually linking existing occupational profiles and how they link together in various career ladders. So this is one for advanced manufacturing. And you see underneath, you see the industry competency, workplace competencies, academic competencies, and personal effective competencies. Those are various stacked competencies in a kind of, you imagine a pyramid what workers need to do once they get in, and how they progress in their competencies once they move up that career ladder, kind of those industry competencies from Tier 3 to Tier 4 to Tier 5, what they need in order to progress in their careers. This is another one for long-term health care, where you see home health aide, personal home care aide, direct support professional, leading into a CNA. Now, you know, many people kind of skip that bottom layer and go straight into a CNA, but I think it's crucial for them to understand where that goes from them. So once they become a CNA, what does that lead to? In this case, because this is long-term health care, this is heading towards registered nurse, but it also may be that certified nursing assistant could be someone that goes into health information management as well, because they've had some experience with patient care. Now they have a way of conceptualizing that when they actually process medical records and things of that nature. So there's multiple ways of progressing through long-term health care. So we've talked about this before. When we think about developing a pathway system and into an apprenticeship system that's appropriate for opportunity use, it requires an assessment of these two factors, right? The degree of preparation for worker education that someone comes to these programs with, and their ability to take advantage of that. And that's really, I think this gives you a good sense as to whether the degree of preparation is high versus their ability to take advantage of opportunities for work or education may be low. And I particularly like this slide because I think it does a really good job of giving us a typology of where someone might be situated in that graph, right? If someone comes to a program where they have the right education, they have a high school or better education, but they're facing obstacles outside of education, that allows us to think about where in the program they might sit. What supports do they need in order to be successful in a career pathway program? Versus someone who's been mismatched with the education system. So their ability to take up opportunities might be high, but they have less than a high school education. So they need additional education to shore them up and get them ready for opportunities, right? So this allows us to think about our programming and where we situate folks vis-a-vis that kind of that broader career ladder, where they enter and where they exit. So when we talk about career pathways, I want to give us just a bit of a primer, and I will dig into this deeper, but this is a good place for us to start. Career pathways are industry focused, meaning that they are focused in a particular industry sector that allows us to think about what is it about that industry sector that's needed, how can we get folks into that industry sector, how can we help them stay there, how can we help them be successful there. A career pathway system is a partnership among local and regional agencies, organizations, institutions, and employers and industry that's adopted what we would really consider an integrated and transformative approach, which at very minimum includes a series of connected courses and training opportunities, right, as a form of preparation, multiple entry points that accommodate participants at entering different skill levels, and multiple exit points at successively higher levels of education, right? So if we think about how those things all stack, I think this, and I'm sorry if it's a smidgen blurry, I think this provides us a sense of what this might look like. Career Pathways really is a combination of rigorous and high-quality education, training, and other services that aligns both vertically and horizontally across secondary education, adult education, workforce training and development, career and technical education, and post-secondary education systems, pathways, and programs, right? That's a lot of things to conceptualize. ICCB, so the Illinois Community College Board, has really spearheaded the movement to create a common career pathways definition and some guidance around that, and I'll share some of that material with all of you after this webinar, after our community practice sessions. So if you think about the multiple entry points at the top of this graph, right? You've got basic skills instruction, whether it's adult basic education, English as a second language, those kind of academic skills and credentials, and whether that's you're entering at a basic skills place, short-term certificate place, long-term certificate place, or two-year degree programs and above. Those are all entry points. Right? Then you also have employability skills and work experience on the bottom, and that's basic career readiness, that's employment and jobs that require basic occupational skills, internships, pre-apprenticeships, and all throughout the spectrum, right? So Those are multiple exit points at successively higher levels of education and employment. So ways for people to get on the bus and people to get off the bus. Wrapped around this are family supporting employment and further education opportunities. Talk about those career ladders. Like, so how are we stacking those opportunities in a way that allow people to conceptualize what a career looks like so that they can get on and off the bus multiple times in order to be successful in a career. Undergirding this are supportive services and navigation assistance, which a lot of your organizations provide in some way, shape, or another, and we're going to spend some time talking about today, hopefully. So I'm going to pause here and just ask, are there particular reactions about this? Are there ways, places where you see yourselves in particular? I'm just curious just to have a kind of a quick open conversation about this particular graph.
Can you make the graph larger?
I sure can try.
Or minimize the organizational box?
For the PowerPoint, there's a little icon that has, 4 corners going, arrows going out to each of the 4 corners. If you click on that, it makes it full screen. It's a little blurry, but it makes it like this size of your entire screen.
Thank you. Sorry.
That's okay. No, I was wondering. I'm like, how can I make it bigger? Yeah. So you should be able to see it on your screen.
I got it now.
Yeah, I'm curious if there are any reactions from folks about this.
And then just also so you know, if you're wondering like, oh my goodness, how do I get it back? Just hover, put your cursor up towards the top, and then you'll see that bar appear, and you can click that icon again, and it makes it back down to regular size.
Sorry, say that again, please. How do you make it bigger?
In
There's
the
a little
upper right hand.
Go ahead. Sorry. No, go ahead.
In the upper right hand corner of the what we call each of these sections of pods. So there's like a little bar at the top for where the PowerPoint is, and over on the right hand side of that bar, you'll see there's a icon with 4 arrows pointing out to each of the 4 corners. You can click on that, and it makes it full screen. And then whenever it's full screen and you want to get it back to its regular size, then you just go back up to the top, and you'll have to hover up there, and then that bar will appear, and then you'll be able to click it, and it'll take it back to the regular size.
Thank you.
So I'm curious as people are looking at this, if there are any kind of, and I recognize it's a little bit blurry, and I'll share this with you in a non-blurry format, but I'm wondering if there are any reactions to this, where you see your program, how you've kind of conceptualized this notion of multiple entry points and exit points within the development of a career pathways program.
So this is Laura from Failing. So I'm looking at the model. I think one of the concern is not really the best word, but for our program, it would be necessary for individuals to come in to start a cohort rather than kind of that multiple level entrance. Just the way our program is structured, they go through kind of a bridge on the onset, and so they need to go through that and then get into the credentialing aspect of the program. So to have individuals kind of that openness, that wouldn't necessarily work for our program model. So literally individuals would need to start a cohort complete, and then we would be able to start another cohort.
So when they leave your cohort, right, when they get their certification, and what certification are they getting, or what's the cohort model?
So ours is in construction, and so they're getting individual or credentials associated with construction. So that could be OSHA, weatherization, various credentialing aspects as they're going through. So while they're going through, like the OSHA part, that's at the very beginning, for instance. So then other credentials are happening as they're going through the cohort. So it would be difficult for us to have individuals to be able to start at different points.
Sure. And I want to make sure this is clear. When we talk about these multiple entry points, we're not talking about in the middle of a program. It's more when they get done with your program, right? They can jump off the bus and go to work, right? They don't have to go through to a bachelor's degree. They can jump off the bus and go to work, but they can also get back on the bus and get a degree in management. They can get a degree in, have you given thought as to what the next steps for those participants would be?
And so once they have completed the credentialing or the training aspect of the program, then yes, they are given options as to what the next step is. And for some, it would be doing that immediate job search. For others, we're looking at using WIOA with their ITA dollars to advance additional education avenues. For some, it may be a 2-year type program where they're becoming, more than an apprentice in their construction trades, but they're actually becoming tradesmen. Okay.
So that's what we're talking about. When we talk about kind of multiple entry points. We're certainly not advocating for multiple entry points within an actual program. I think that would be super disruptive. That would be so disruptive to you. But I think making sure that there's a career ladder, that there's something for participants to point to. They say, okay, once I'm done with this, I know I have these 3 different options I can go into. And that the community is working together to kind of conceptualize what that looks like, because it could be that your organization is not the one that provides that next training opportunity. It's the community college, right? So you have to work in partnerships so that they actually accept the credits from your organization.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that's the development. Yeah, go ahead.
This is Eileen from Methodist College, and I think that's something that Peoria is really starting to figure out, and those who are on the call from the city or Peoria Public Schools, please jump in. The Greater Peoria Economic Development Council has spent 2 or 3 years trying to sell this idea of career pathways, and has really gained some good traction of getting the right people at the right table to talk about these entry and exit points and how we can, each one of us provide a little piece of this pathway, and how do we share resources and communicate it. And I think that's where we're really to the point now. We kind of have these pathways figured out, and now we're struggling with, okay, how do we communicate? So like one thing that we've done with Peoria Public Schools is developed advising this great handbook for students that has all of these industry clusters and what you can take at, what courses to take at which high schools, and then how will that convert to the community college or to the other 4-year institutions in the area, and who are the employers and how much does it pay. It's this wonderful, wonderful resource. But as the mother of a sophomore, after working on this project, I found my daughter's booklet of career pathways in her garbage can in her room. And I very nonchalantly picked it up and said, well, tell me about this. And her response was, oh, that was just something that we got at school today. I don't know what it is. So after I rolled it up and whacked her one with it, I said, okay, let's sit down and let's talk about this. So we're struggling with, like we have this system, but now we're trying to, okay, how do we communicate it? And I think the system is very well developed, even from kindergarten through post-secondary. And now we're working at, okay, what about those displaced workers? What about the adult learners? How do we get them? How do we extend that pathway and get that communicated to, jumping onto it back when you're, jumping back onto that pathway when you're 40, 50, 60 years old. So I think Peoria's got a really great model.
Yeah, and you've been working on it for quite some time. I mean, Greater Peoria. And we've spoken about this before, but Peoria really started this in 2013 as an initiative through the mayor's office, and it's grown and morphed through that. And so really trying to make sure that Peoria Public Schools is on board with that. And then I'm interested in this notion that, and I also have a 15-year-old, so I empathize with you entirely. But this idea that students themselves are not getting this, like they're not necessarily getting the progression of their own education. And I'm curious from the rest of the folks on the call, whether we're talking about high school students or opportunity youth, is there a sense as to, is that a loss point for folks that, whether it's for recruitment purposes or retention purposes in programs, is this a loss point, this kind of absence of understanding amongst participants or students about what comes next?
Okay, again, Laura from Failing. So no, that is something that we have discussed with participants.
Okay.
What their additional avenues are post our particular training. And so if you're looking to become journeyman, that will require some additional credentialing or some additional education. And so we actually started the program with letting them know this is what you can come out with and make, in terms of salary, this salary range. But if you wanted to do additional things, and this is your potential earnings, and so this would require some additional certifications. And so, no, we actually incorporated that idea with them at the very onset.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
How about other folks?
This is Sabrina with Lewis and Clark. I know, we do the 4-week on-ramping, and during that time we really discuss all of our pathway options. But we do start a cohort at the beginning of the college semester is how our opportunity youth schedule, begins. And as we're moving through that, we're offering the ASAP support courses. And so we're continuing to talk about, like, what's your next step? Where are your goals? Where are you going from here? So by the time we finish that 16 weeks, they know that they're transitioning from phase 1 to phase 2, and then ultimately phase 3 is how we've broken down our, our media for recruitment. And as they come into the program, they know in 16 weeks it doesn't end. It's just another, that multiple entry point. It's where we're going to start a new semester for people coming in fresh, but it's also where we're going to transition into either those longer-term certificates or, at that point. So I do think we are having a lot of discussion around there being a next, the next place, and then what are you doing after that? And it's starting at the very beginning in that week 1 of the on-ramping bridge process.
So that's really baked into your discussion. You think, okay, you get done with these 16 weeks, and these are the different places you can go after that.
Right.
Okay. What about other folks?
This is Jamila in Peoria with the Peoria Core Program. I did want to add an element. Good morning. Specific to like the basic skills attainment piece, particularly for young people who are out of school, have been out of school for a number of years, and maybe who even had struggled during their time in school with testing and academic achievements, that being able to provide those support services or supplemental services to help with the remediation process, so that when they do become interested or they express desires to go into trades or even, into college, that they have that additional support academically. And that's the piece where we have seen a gap, is that there have been young people who've expressed their desire and interest in trades, in going into unions and things of that nature, but it's time to take that basic skills assessment, that TABE test. This is where they're sort of falling by the wayside by not achieving the required grade level. But there has not been a really major concerted effort in providing those supplemental services. So we experience, I think that pipeline that Dr. Setti had mentioned earlier is very strong, but there is this gap that we are experiencing, and I think it's solely been through practice that we've seen this gap reveal itself, that
these young people need those additional remedial services in order to be prepared to take those basic skills assessment tests to qualify for the various apprenticeship programs that exist.
So that's really
so what we had to
do. Yeah, go ahead.
So what we did with Peoria Corps is, even though CareerLink here, the local CareerLink, had a requirement of a basic skills grade level, what we did was, even if they did not meet that basic skills grade level, we still accepted them into the program based off their other criteria, but also provided them with those support services. So we linked with a GED or testing program here that offers those support services to help them improve on those skill sets. So then when they were able to retake that TABE test, they were able to improve on their test scores. And so where we can be able to intentionally incorporate more of those types of programming supports, then I think we'll see an increase in qualified applicants for these various programs.
So what's the organization that you partnered with for the high school equivalency program?
It's called Moonlight Adult Literacy. It's run out of the Park District, a highly experienced teacher from the school district who does a lot of work in GED support. She's done work over the last 2 decades with providing GED support and tutoring for young people in prison and those who are coming out. And what makes this program so unique is that it doesn't have the same sort of parameters around you have to attend for the certain amount of time in order to progress through. It provides this sort of drop in and out process, so where people's circumstances may interrupt them from completing a 8-week GED course. They were able then to attend this Moonlight Adult Literacy where they're able to kind of take their tests at their own pace.
That's great. I think that's a really successful example of using community partners, leveraging community partners well to address a particular challenge. I think that's a phenomenal example. I feel like, go ahead.
Hi,
Go ahead,
this
please.
is Sandra. This is Sandra from OAI. In talking about the career pathways, at OAI we've intentionally designed career pathways for both our young people and our adult learners, job seekers, targeting the manufacturing hot jobs, so to say, the advanced manufacturing, as well as, in the healthcare. So for the young people, we get them started, kind of thinking about what they want to do in terms of, final career in life. So, and then we let them know about all the entry-level things that can happen. I think we developed all of these through, using Career Connect as well, by the way, in WorkNet. So we think about, we let them know about the entry-level things that can happen with, being a forklift driver. You can actually end up being a general operations manager in a manufacturing plant, starting from being a forklift driver. So we do offer that to them. We do the usher, and then they have opportunity to go through the forklift program at PSC, Prairie State College. And we also teach them about they could start off as being welders as well, and then end up being machine operators. And then because we have the robotics program, that is helping them understand that they can end up being engineers, so they learn through the robotics how to become electrical technicians as a starting, as a career path, the first rung of the ladder, so to say. Then we also
Sandra, go ahead, and then I'll ask my
question.
Go ahead.
No, that's
fine.
No,
you.
no,
Sorry,
there's so many
I get very
pathways.
excited.
We kind of, we drew I worked on developing these graphs that shows all the levels, so that way they can visually see it. So I was just going through all of them, but go ahead, ask.
Well, I think, first of all, I think it would be great to share that with folks. I think that everyone would love to see those. And I'm also curious with your opportunity use, how are you using the robotics program? Like, where are you plugging that in to their ladder?
Okay, so we have the Maker Lab and robotics program combined, and they come in the Maker Lab to learn. Actually, one of the things we tried to do was put a curriculum together using, making a robot, making a vehicle, and then, align some of the activities to the STEM standards. So we tie that in the Maker Lab portion, and the whole game plan is at the end of it, they compete as a team in the robotics Olympics that we're hosting in April. Yeah, so that's where it's tied in. So they know that at the end, in April, they have to compete, so they have to learn all of these things that make it possible for their robots to actually win in the competition. So that's where we tie it. Yes.
And all of those teams are assigned, or they're all aligned with a particular employer, correct?
That's correct. So, for the robotics challenge, right now today as we speak, Don is not on the line because he's over in Peoria State College. We're doing the showcase today. And at this showcase, employers are there looking at young people, showing off their, whatever they've developed thus far. And then the employers then make the determination at this showcase to sponsor a team for the robotics.
Okay. I think that's a really interesting connection that I think offers some nuance to this notion of this kind of multiple entry points. I think it provides students with a different way of conceptualizing this work. It's not just about kind of the rigorous training and the stackable pieces of the training program, but also a way of actually creating some experiential learning around that. And I'm curious from other folks, is work-based learning being, in some way, whether it's through a competition or it's actually in the workplace, how is that being embedded in the way that you design your programs?
So that's me? You're asking me?
Yeah. I can ask you or everybody.
Okay, anyone.
I'm opening it as well.
Okay, so we have OJT. We usually would have opportunities for our young people to do the internship, and the internship, as you know, is paid. After the internship, we have opportunity. Many times we're lucky. The employers like the kids and they employ them right away, and then that's like a really good situation. However, there are some instances where we actually have to write an OJT contract to help this young person to become fully employed after a period of, let's say, 3 months. So so that's how we're using work-based experiences. So we use the partnership model of 50% wages, and so we do that. We've done that with a few of our young people that were placed in internships, lost our products, and one of them just got finally employed full-time.
Okay, that's great. How about other folks? I'm curious about where work-based learning or competitions or experiences for students or for learners, how is this being wrapped into your program in any kind of intentional way?
This is Sabrina again at Lewis and Clark. So one of the things that we've done is as students are, if they go into a construction path, which is we have a Tier 1 and Tier 2. When they complete Tier 1, if they have received their GED at that point and their PAC certificate, they then qualify to be able to be a part of the grad crew. The grad crew then gets paid an hourly work experience amount, and then they take a college career development course at the same time that they're doing that. And that's while we're still working with them to prepare them for going into work or possibly going into Tier 2 construction, which is our highway construction program, and that even more intensely trains them for the trades. And so that's our kind of progression along the way.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's really baked into that. And I think that that's something that this graph does not do a very good job of, is actually talking about where how work-based learning experiences can actually be embedded in as part of those multiple entry and exit points, right? So as you contemplate the progression of rigorous education, where work-based learning actually gets baked into that.
Right.
Any other thoughts about that from anyone else?
So this is Michael Kuhn from Peoria Public Schools.
Hi.
We have two programs that we work with over the grant. One's with our health occupation students. They're embedded where they do an internship their second year. And then they're also, some of the students in that program are involved in competition through Skills USA, so they're able to take what they learn it from their internships. They go and take their CNA exam, but some of those students actually also go out to Skills USA and we're able to compete for scholarships in that area.
That's great.
And
That's great.
then our IT program, same thing. It's a certification program where they take their certification. But we're looking into developing a Skills USA program with them also. One thing that I wanted to share is we also have a work-based learning program that we partner with Perfect in Peoria, and it's a construction-based. And just yesterday, they went and visited the local Goodwill Training Center, and I have to share with all of you that this was a resource that we didn't really know to extent that it existed. After talking with them last night, they have a training facility basically in every region of Illinois that you can reach out to, and all the Goodwill stores, 99 cents out of every dollar that's for purchasing funds go to these training facilities, and I'm just not sure if everyone's aware of it because I wasn't aware of it myself.
So what do they do at the training facility? I know of them, but I don't know to the extent that they actually provide training.
So one of the things they did just with Perfect and our construction students was they actually helped them. These students are basically what they do in that program, which is not affiliated with this grant, is they spend the first 6 months going to different trade unions and visiting them, and then the next 6 months they decide which trade union they want to belong to or go into, and then they do an internship at an employer. But they have to do an interview process to do that. So what Goodwill does is first helps them create a resume, and they talk about, basically how to do an interview. They will record the interview, and they do all these things relating to not anyone in the community. Like the local Goodwill in the Peoria area serves about 44,000 people a year. So. And they're welcome. And that I talked to them last night, and they were like, "We're willing to come into your school, do presentations. This is part of our service, and let everybody else know that we'll do it for them." So it's not just a Peoria thing; it's a state of Illinois thing.
That is a phenomenal resource. So they'll actually come in and do kind of employability skills training.
Correct.
So
correct. Interview. Resume building. And I thank you, Dr. Setti, for sharing that example with your daughter, because we realize that some of the things that we do with these curriculum books and the pathway books, that students are literally some aren't understanding what those are. So we even went a step farther in our district, and we've used Career Careers, and I know most of you are aware of that with the interest survey. But what we did was we went a step farther and said, you know what, it's not just Matchmaker, it's not just interest survey, and we pushed it where each student in our district starting in 6th grade starts to develop an individualized learning plan where they decide based on those interests which career pathway they're going to go after. And we made a decision in our district through our superintendent, Dr. Karat, to say, you know what, every student's going to do that. So when students graduate, they're going to have an individualized learning plan that talks about what their steps and what they want to do the day after they graduate from high school. So that's just
phenomenal.
Yeah, that's just something. And they've now, I don't know if anybody's aware of it, but there's 10 school districts in the state of Illinois that have gotten what they call a competency learning grant through the state. There's no funding attached to it, but we're in the process in Peoria Public Schools of developing those different areas. And one of the things they're looking at is if a student is, able to look at a pathway, how can we have that student go out into the workforce and basically earn those credits instead of sitting in a seat. So yesterday we had a meeting about, we have a hair braiding program in our Career Center, and developing a second year for these hair braiding students to actually go and do a work-based learning experience, and they get high school credit by going out and basically volunteering at community centers and nursing homes to do hair braiding of seniors in these areas. So that's just one of the areas. I don't know if that is a good example for you, but that's something that everyone, we're all trying to find different ways of doing things. And
no, I think that's brilliant. I think that's an incredibly important thing, and I'll send some information around about the competency learning grant from the Illinois State Board of Education. This is all part of the Post-Secondary Workforce Readiness Act that our office is very closely working with state agencies to design it and also to implement it. And so I can send you some broader information about that. But I've actually included a piece of this on the next slide, and you'll see down here, you'll see Post-Secondary Workforce Readiness Act.org, so PWRAct.org. This is the way that the PWR Act is actually conceptualized, kind of college and career pathway endorsement, which is a key, kind of one of the cornerstones of the Post-Secondary Workforce Readiness Act, in which I can go over in a subsequent webinar. I can actually host a separate one just for post-secondary workforce readiness so that you kind of have a better sense as to where the state's leaning on that. So I think that's an incredibly important segue, because as we contemplate how we better use our in-school partners to support out-of-school work and our out-of-school partners to support in-school work, I think this shows kind of the symbiotic nature of that type of partnership. And I have to think about a little bit more about like how we better use that, but I think that the Peoria's example, really thinking about how they are starting to potentially use goodwill and how that might actually, I'll be curious to see how that actually impacts some of your programs going forward and how you're able to leverage that resource. And I'm going to spend a little time digging into that. So when we think about the broader challenges for kind of career pathway system development, when we have students that are in a school, they're more of a captive audience. I mean, despite and I completely empathize with your daughter throwing her packet of work into the garbage can. I think that there's a lot of information being thrown at students, and they're very overwhelmed, and a lot of information being thrown at parents, and they're very overwhelmed. But when we talk about opportunity use, there's additional layers of challenges. First, around recruitment, like actually getting students into the program, sustaining employer engagement more broadly. How do we keep employers engaged with a population of students who isn't necessarily prepared to do some of the work at the employer level at the rate that they're anticipating? And then also accommodating those participant needs, whether they're skills deficiencies or other barriers to employment, such as limited English proficiency, lack of childcare, transportation, housing, financial constraints. And I know we've talked about some of these in the past, but I wanted to kind of put this out there as we think about career pathway systems addressing those needs. How have you, in the way that you've developed your programs, addressed some of these particular things using kind of the mindset of like, we're getting them in the door and this is a way to get them further in their career by stacking either credentials or stacking education? I'm curious if we can talk a little bit, how have you addressed some of these challenges in the development of your program?
This is Jamila in Peoria. I would say this is one of the benefits of sort of partnering with LWI 15, the local career link. It's being able to utilize the support services that they have access to. So we have a number of our participants that are co-enrolled in our grant and the We of 15, and being able to sort of leverage the resources that they have of childcare and transportation has been really helpful in supporting our participants through the program.
That's great.
So that's definitely been a benefit.
Okay, that's really helpful. What about other folks?
Hi, this is excuse me. This is Cindy, and we're at the Phalanx program. And so, two things that come to mind on the barriers to employment, because we are dealing in the construction space as well when it comes to the job assignments. Transportation is probably our biggest constraint that we're still dealing with. Oftentimes the time of day that a student needs to be on the job site, the distance that they may have to travel to get to the job site, and sometimes there are even multiple job sites in a day. So transportation is one of the barriers that we're struggling with to deal with for them in that space. The other one, though, is has to do with, we can talk about it as sustaining employer engagement. We're finding employers are excited about the prospect of having interns and working with them, and the skills that we are training them on, certifications and that's great. Our issue really has more to do with the students, that soft skill stuff. That's where our challenge is, because keeping the employers engaged means that when the student gets there, regardless of what certifications we've got, if student is scheduled to be there 4 days and they only show up 2, or they only, or they're coming in late, or they're not giving their full attention. I had one employer say, it seems to me that they're more here because somebody's making them be here than it's because they really want to have a job. And so I'd say our challenges are really have more to do with overcoming that entitlement mentality or lack of self-confidence and motivation at the student level than it is the skills training. That part is actually fairly easy.
So I'm wondering about partnering with organizations that support the development of soft skills training for students. I'm thinking about Goodwill. I mean, if this is something that they offer, kind of practical interview, resume building, things of that nature. I'm curious how other programs have addressed the development of soft skills. And I'm not a fan of that term. I don't know what else to call it, employability skills. But how have other programs, folks on the phone, addressed this issue of getting learners prepared for employment?
So at Lewis and Clark, we actually share an employee with Madison County Employment and Training. That's Damon. He's on the call today. And he's with them 2.5 days a week, and he's with us at program 2.5 days a week. So he teaches career development to our students and then helps to identify what their employment needs are, and he's able to kind of bridge that gap between the employment services they offer over there and what our students' needs are here. And so we've built that into program schedule weekly.
Who was this again? I'm sorry, I missed that. I was writing something
Sabrina
down.
Davis at Lewis and Clark.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
I could see all your faces.
Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Okay. Well, I have to duplicate what the woman before last said. Our problem is the class is going great, and they're doing great in their studies, and they're doing great at their exams, but it is trying to get them to invest in themselves and look at these classes as preparing for their future. I think they've got so many. I know they're at-risk youth, and I completely understand, but my problem is keeping them motivated or trying to motivate them to
realize that they can do this because they're so successful in class and at their exams, but it's like pulling teeth, because like their attitude at work is mediocre, but the employer says they can do the work and they can learn, but their attitudes, or they talk poorly about other individuals maybe in their class or other coworkers that are there, which I'm going to address all of this with them, but I don't know how to motivate them to make even their appearance to look worksite presentable, and I've talked to them about it before, but it's just in the development of these individuals, and I know their environment, what they have to go home to, and what they've grown up in, and what's been told to them from the beginning. I know that's all a mental state, and I'm trying to change that, but it'd be great to have something to help with them. I mean, to motivate. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but
no. I think you're getting it across that one of the barriers is actually students' sense of self-efficacy at work and their own sense of appropriate behavior at work is a real barrier. And I'm curious about other folks, and I'm trying to be respectful of time, but we always end up having such great conversations. What are some of are there other folks that have been able to address some of this, whether it's partnering through other organizations or it's something that you've managed to develop in-house?
This is Eileen from Methodist College, and I'll share something that we had absolutely nothing to do with. It just happened. It wasn't intentional. Our program started with our apprentices taking their CNA coursework first, and we had some extra spaces left in that class, and so we ended up with a student who was not in the apprenticeship program, who's a little bit older and is just one of those amazing human beings, and she turned out, she willingly just kind of became the mentor for these 6 young women, and that, while we still are struggling with personal hygiene with some of them and behavior at the hospital, and I mean we are still struggling with that, but having someone who, even though this woman was a little bit older, she was doing the same thing that they were doing, right? Like she was relatable to them, and I think she has really helped us with some of that, classroom behavior, workplace behavior, and so I'm wondering if there's a way that we can develop mentoring programs with people who have been successful on this journey, who could, even if it's just coming to speak to these students. I think that's something that we're thinking about here with some of our Bachelors of Science in Nursing students who come from the same background, who have been successful in the nursing program, to have them come in and talk to our apprentices about what it's like and the changes that you have to make, and is it worth it? And hopefully they say that, yes, it is worth it, to come to work clean and to have a good attitude and that type of thing. So that's something that we discovered here just by happenstance.
I think that's a really interesting insight, this idea of developing some kind of a mentorship program from alumni of whether it's of that particular program or a program like it. It's not a terrible idea. So I want to be respectful of time. I could keep going all day. I want to share my screen here for a second because I want to just make sure that I'm plugging this. Okay, let's see here. All right, so I sent everyone a message about this. This would have been in mid-December, and then I sent another one last week. I advocated for this with DCO, and they accepted it, and I want to make sure that I'm making another plug for this. There's an upcoming conference that our organization, in partnership with Advanced Illinois and the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, is running. It's our 5th annual conference. It's the Illinois 60 by 25 Network. And 60 by 25 is based on the Illinois state's goal of getting 60% of adults in Illinois with a high-quality post-secondary degree or credential by the year 2025. And this is really a conference that's designed for communities, or for communities that are trying to do the really hard work of building college and career pathway systems at the local level, and how we better connect that to state resources, and how we better connect state to local and local back to state, like how we make that conduit actually occur in a really cohesive way. At the conference last year, there were over 30 communities across the state that were represented, and we have, at this point, 13 leadership communities, and those are communities that have done some of their really hard, heavy, deep work of determining an area of focus, a community of focus, of determining what pathways they're really focusing on in developing a partnership across systems. Peoria is one of our leadership communities, and I highly advocate for as many of you that can come to this conference on February 6th and 7th to do so, to come. DCO has supported you using travel dollars from your funds, from your grant, to be able to attend this conference, and I would love to see as many of you there as possible. I know that OAI, of which Sandra spoke just a few minutes ago, they are going to be represented at the conference, and this year, the real focus of the conference is on scaling for impact. How do we actually take all this good stuff that we're learning and scale it, with a focus on equity as the mechanism through which we scale? And there's going to be speakers, so the superintendent of the state board is going to be there. We have representation from all the state agencies, as well as representatives from organizations that support work with Opportunity Youth. For instance, the executive director, the president of Leaders Up will be there giving a talk, as well as folks from Connect Ed in California. They're the organization that leads the Link to Learning effort in California, which is their pathway system design in California, as well as many other folks from across the state. So I'm going to send you guys this agenda. You've all received a formal invitation from me, as well as a registration link. But if you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, I would love to you can either email them to me or you can ask right now. Are there any questions that anyone might have?
Can you resend the conference registration information?
I
and
sure
where
can.
is the conference and when?
It is actually in Bloomington, and it's February 6th and 7th. So I sent this to everybody on, I think it was mid-December, and then I sent it again last week, but I will send another one today. And the registration, the conference itself is February 6th and 7th in Bloomington.
Thank you.
No problem. Anybody else? Any other thoughts or questions? Okay. I think that I've taken 3 more minutes of your time than I meant to, but these are really robust conversations. I think this is wonderful. I'm going to be sending out a short recap of our conversation, along with a short little survey, just to figure out kind of what our next topics are going to be, like where we're going from here. So I make sure that I'm responsive to what you want to learn and listen to and think about throughout the course of our next communities of practice. So on that note, I will let you all go. Thanks so much, everybody, and have a great day.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.